I certainly honestly believe religion is detrimental to the progress of humanity. You know, it's just selling an invisible product. It's too easy. They believe that on Sunday they're drinking the blood of a 2,000-year-old God.
Welcome back to Boys Bible Study, the show where we analyze religious texts using the powers of logic and reason. I'm your co-host, Ash. I'm here with my co-hosts,
Scott
and Julian.
So today we watched a film that's like a little bit outside of our canon, but I think really important for us to finally take a look at as students of culture, as we are. This is the 2008 documentary Religulous by modern-day American prophet Bill Maher.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace. After we regret to inform you that after a long battle with the novel coronavirus, Bill Maher has unfortunately passed away. This podcast is dedicated to his memory. It's been a long... What did we think of this one, guys?
I'm glad he got coronavirus.
But, well, what did the Christian community at large think of this? I think we have a good resource. Before we analyze it ourselves, we have a pretty good resource that provides, a Christian framing of this text.
Yeah. After I read about how seriously Bill was taking the task of making this documentary, I thought I would be equally serious and read one plugged-in review for it before watching it.
Yes. Remind us what plugged in is.
Plugged In is Focus on the Family's movie review publication. Mm-hmm. And one that I've been reading for a very long time, since childhood.
It's true. Scott is maybe Plugged In's longest subscriber and reader.
Oh,
you wanted to write for them when you were a wee lad, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, because then I could watch every single movie, whether it was Christian or not.
Yes.
And then let people know whether they should be watching it or not.
Yes. Yeah, and Plugged In offers a Christian perspective on the media of today. You can read the Plugged In review before you decide whether to show, Jojo Siwa to your young daughter or something to that extent. But of course, they reviewed Religulous, and here is their review.
And real quick, had I known this would be part of the job, I wouldn't have wanted it as much.
Yeah.
Early in his documentary, Religulous, Bill Maher talks about how he used to go to Catholic Mass with his father and sister. He tells us that his mom didn't attend because she was Jewish. And we see a picture of Bill, about age 7, all dressed up in his Sunday best, with a toy revolver hanging from his waist. I wouldn't take off my gun, Maher explains. Cute little Billy Maher may be all grown up now, but the rascally tyke hasn't changed much. On screen, he goes back to church and synagogue and mosque and temple with his verbal guns ablazing, firing his wit and sarcasm at anything that dares move. What's that, you say? You believe in Jesus? Blam. The virgin birth? Blam. Miraculous signs and wonders? Blam. Maher lines up the faithful and rat-a-tat-tats them with zeal. Atheism's own Charles Bronson, spoiling for a fight. What Maher may not know is that he's still firing off the equivalent of his plastic pistol. Sure, there's some smoke, there's some noise, but long after he's shoved the thing back in its holster, the religious ideals and spiritual concepts he's aiming at, the ones that hold up to biblical truth at least, are left standing with nary a mark on them.
So true.
I was so gratified to finally go to a screening with people last night and hear how big the laughs are, Maher reportedly said once the film started its cycle of early showings.
Lying is a sin, Bill, but go on.
Because we set out to make a comedy. I always said, my primary motivation was I'm a comedian and this is comedy gold. When you're talking about a man living to 900 years old and drinking the blood of a 2,000-year-old god, and that creation museum where they put a saddle on a dinosaur because people rode dinosaurs, it's just a pile of comedy that was waiting for someone to exploit.
Oh, God.
Waiting for people to exploit things, I think, is a key concept throughout this.
Yes.
Also in tune with the modern stand-up routine is the film's negative content quotient. Maher smokes marijuana with a devotee of weed. And this is an important part to mention about Plugged In.
Yes.
They let you know about which types of content to look out for.
Right.
Beyond the usual ratings.
I see.
Yeah.
It's like there's drug content, there's sex content, etc.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
There are F words and S words. Maher calls Jesus nuts and dismisses biblical writers as having effed up. God's name gets...
so
I
cute.
guess I can say it, as having fucked up. God's name gets tangled up with damn. Obscene gestures are made. Vulgar jokes target everything from the virgin birth and the Holy Ghost indwelling to masturbation, pedophilia, and homosexual sex. Many of history's greatest thinkers have indisputably been Christians, and their faith was central to their search for truth. Maher and most of the faithful he lampoons ask many of the same questions. The difference is this. Maher thinks he's found all of the answers and has carved them for us in cinematic stone. He shaped the foundation of a soulless, dogmatic doctrine, rigid in form and unforgiving in outlook. The faithful were still listening. That's the review.
Probably the most I've agreed with a Plugged In review. I think that writer like really nailed down some of the fundamental like storytelling flaws of Religulous.
Didn't touch on the insane amount of racism in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Add that to the list of grievances.
Yeah, I mean, from a Christian perspective, yeah, that was definitely like a pretty decent takedown of the fact that like Religulous does have religious like devotion to its point of view, but
Absolutely.
yeah, it didn't really get into the many other like offensive qualities about it that are completely non-denominational. But still, that is a pretty good framework for us to get into it. I think most people listening probably know who Bill Maher is, of course.
Sadly.
Yeah. Well, there is something to be said. So, Bill Maher is interesting because, like, he definitely holds a place in, like, he's a liberal enemy of Christians. Like, Christians to this day, even though, I mean, in our estimation, he's totally like faded from relevance, but like Christians to this day totally see him as like a public enemy.
He is like, he has like propped himself up as like the representative for like liberal, like the lefter end of the political spectrum, not the left, but like the liberal end of the spectrum, which in the mind of like majority of the people in America, it's like you're either conservative or you're liberal.
Right.
So if you're not conservative, then you're going to be liberal. And this guy is like one of your icons. Yeah. And he sucks so bad.
He really does. Yeah, he's really been like, I represent the liberal point of view. He has claimed that mantle for himself, and it's impossible really to separate him from like American liberalism. Yeah. Like when
he's also one of those guys who would be like, no, I never said I was liberal. Never said I spoke for anybody but myself.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
And then not back it up much like he does throughout this whole movie.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, I would say Bill Maher is definitely up there with, Richard Dawkins. These are other sort of like American thinkers and media personalities.
I think he's
Christians
British.
See. Oh, we'll just say, Western media personalities, English speaking media personalities who Christians see as people to fight against. And, I would say like Christians shouldn't be giving this guy fire, like the same way that like
just ignore him. Yeah,
exactly. The same way that like, liberals gas up all these like weird, like internet alt-right extremists as like Milo Yiannopoulos. It's like, listen, just ignore this guy. That's what I want to tell about. That's what I want to say to Christians about Bill Maher. Like, please, just like don't give fuel to his fire. Like, he went and made this fucking documentary because he thinks he's like, America's most wanted in the eyes of the Christian right.
I have it on good authority in a sort of telling tales out of Hollywood school.
Right.
That he is, in fact, 100% confirmed a guy who do not look him in the eye.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Like, not sort of like the way, like, some people are like, they send out the company-wide email so they don't have like every fucking person coming up to them being like, hey, I got a show idea. Hey, I got
Right.
He's just like an asshole. Like,
Wow.
Yeah.
It almost seems that he has contempt for anyone in a lower class than him. Possibly, could this be something that might be a theme of his artistic oeuvre over the years?
So you're saying he's a guy who would belittle other people?
Yeah, I
with
think
very
so.
little information.
I cannot confirm personally, but I have it on good authority that he may not be the nicest guy.
Yeah.
Oh, we should mention why we are tackling this movie in particular.
Yes.
So last week's movie was the wonderful Fireproof, which made buku bucks at the box office. Did real good cost $500,000 to make, made $33 million at the box office, and then $49 million video on demand. The same week, this movie came out. Which was made for $2.5 million, and it ended up making $13 million at the box office.
This cost $2.5 million.
Yes,
that is surprising.
That's
in itself.
unreal.
Yes.
That's hard to believe. It looked way cheaper than Fireproof, but
really did.
Anyway, so this turned what, a $10 million profit?
Yeah,
That's fucking chump change.
cool comparatively.
Comparatively,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, it's good though. That's a good return for a movie. It's a multiplier.
Yeah, I mean, I hope when I make my movie, I make 10 million on it. Certainly, I'd be happy. But I mean, like, come on, this is Hollywood. You know what I mean? Like 10 million. I have to pay my pilot that every year. You know what I mean? Like, I think this is Bill Maher's flop era, if you ask me. Especially compared to the hard work and huge returns of the Kendrick brothers with Fireproof. These two were really in an ideological battle in the box office on that fateful weekend in 2008.
Yeah.
So it's like a pretty interesting cultural study to take a look at the two of them, which is what we tried to do.
And one of them set out to make a movie that reached a demographic in a specific way that hadn't quite been done in that way, a new story that people can enjoy, and one just attempted to recreate random people you talk to in college, but like by completely belittling them as they talked that way. It really reminded me of discussions in college I would have sometimes when I was still a Christian, and I was genuinely open to hearing people's thoughts on everything. And so, like, for example, frequently somebody would say, like, well, there's just so many contradictions in the Bible. And I would go, oh, like what?
Right.
And they never have anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there aren't contradictions in the Bible, but, like, you can't be talking your shit when you don't have, like, a basis besides, like, your own belief.
Yes.
Right. Well, that's sort of like the gotcha documentarianism, if that's a word.
Sure.
That this movie follows, where it's like, we're going to, engage in a discussion with this person who disagrees with us, but we're going to have all of our notes ready. And if they can't answer with like citations within like 5 seconds of us presenting the topic, then your interview is going to be like, your response will be cut and replaced with a blank, like 10 seconds of you giving a blank stare while you're clearly listening to somebody off camera talk.
Yeah.
And it's going to be presented as you being completely dumbfounded by basically a sentient flying spaghetti monster bumper sticker talking to you.
Yes. That completely, like, ideology completely aside, that is by far the most frustrating thing about this entire documentary is, like, there is no good faith attempt to get a response from anyone. It is total, like, rhetorical questions. The person who's sitting on the other side of the interview, although many people in the film are psychopaths, I will, like,
that's the worst part about this, is that it sounds like we're defending like truly reprehensible people that he interviews.
But it's just like, but that alone is like so frustrating, because it's like Bill Maher has psychopaths on, but he's too narcissistic to even let them be psychopaths.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't even it doesn't even get that far to letting anyone say anything that shows off their reprehensible viewpoints, because he's too much of a narcissist that he has to talk over everything anyone's saying, and the interviews are just him and all the responses are cut.
He made Ken Ham sound completely boring, which that guy is... Boring is not one of the things that he is.
I wasn't aware of Ken Ham before this. What's his story?
So Ken Ham is a famed Australian Christian educator who ended up being pretty famous for claiming that people and dinosaurs existed at the same time. And he, I believe, founded, but definitely oversees the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter. And famously debated Bill Nye.
Oh, nice. I would like to see that. I would like to see them doing mixed martial arts, actually.
It would be far more interesting than him having whatever kind of discussion he was having with Bill Maher, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. So, again, completely, ideology aside, I don't see how anyone can go into this documentary, even if you're I'm a Bill Maher fan, I'm a devout atheist. Even if you go as far as to say, I believe that religion is destroying the world, even if you completely agree with that hypothesis, I do not see how you can go into this documentary and watch and enjoy and think that anything happened. Nothing happened.
Yeah. This is just an excuse to go into the theater and laugh at people you think are stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason why things are the way they are right now in this country.
I would go as far as to say, and I wrote down in my notes, so let's say you're a liberal and you don't understand how Trump got elected or why people stormed the Capitol.
Yeah.
The reason is directly because of the 2008 documentary Religulous.
It's the sole cause.
I will at some point post online or write on a whiteboard and take a picture of it. I'm going to write Religulous in parentheses 2008 and then an arrow that points down that says Trump presidency and then an arrow that points up that says 9/11. I believe that 9/11 was caused by people, religious extremists, much like the film Assassin 33 AD, Muslim extremists who saw Religulous and then went back in time to do 9/11.
That makes sense. Yeah.
That is basically the only explanation I can come up with.
And we're here to hear you out. We're not here to talk over you with little snide remarks.
Well, no, let me finish.
Or walk out in the middle of the interview.
Oh my God, when he did that
we'll get to that in a
documentary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh fuck, I forgot what it was going to say. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's shit like this that is the liberal belief that the world would be a much better place if these stupid people with these stupid beliefs would just stop being so stupid and start being smart when I condescendingly explain to them why they're so stupid. From my in the making of my $3 million in the making of my documentary that cost more money than most of these people will ever see in their life.
Yes. Which was edited using fucking free stock footage from archive.org.
Hyper edited.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But that is you have an opportunity here. You have the money and the means to go around and sort of dig at the root of how power works with religion and how capitalism can use these beliefs to exploit working and lower class people. But instead you'd rather blame all the problems on the lower class people believing these ridiculous things. Not the fact that there's $1 trillion PR machines essentially telling people who are do nothing but work to survive.
Yes.
These are the things you must believe and these are the things that are true. Instead of digging at that, you're saying, hey, you're stupid for falling for this stuff.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the time to just sit on your ass with your fucking Googling why Jesus is dumb.
Well said.
Yeah, instead of pointing out like where the abuse of power is actually coming from, he's just abusing the power that he has
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
to make like a doxploitation movie.
And that is the second most frustrating thing about this documentary, or maybe the first. If the first most frustrating thing is that he doesn't let fucking anyone talk, the second most frustrating thing is there are so many obvious, valid, important critiques of religion that you can do. I know I'm a Christian. I hate that I have to like anytime like the Westboro Baptist Church said like God hates fags, I was like, finally, like someone talking sense in this movie, because compared to what Bill Maher was saying, all the fucking like, crazy people he was talking to seemed reasonable, because he has just like no substantial critique of these very obvious like horrible abuses of power that take place within religion. It's like child's play, and he wasn't able to nail one thing during this entire 2-hour-long documentary.
He's a fucking leech who should be stomped on. Ugh.
God, it would be so amazing if Bill Maher was shrunk down to a tiny size and I swallowed him whole and he was just traveling down my throat.
Apparently he's got a huge dick.
Really?
Yeah, it's well documented online.
Oh.
He gets around.
He did a documentary on it
No, it's
called Religulous.
I was looking up Bill Maher on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And one of them was a clip on YouTube from a different podcast where a woman who had slept with Bill Maher talks about it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
Congrats
further
on
proof
the
that
sex.
God doesn't exist.
Yeah, I'm forced to reevaluate my position on Bill Maher.
Should we go through and say like everybody he talks to?
There are definitely a few people that it's very important that we talk about. Like the black preacher who he is just suddenly starts like saying like bling and talking about pimps and like showing clips of pimps and stuff while he's like...
Let's go through, it doesn't have to be in order, but let's definitely go through beat by beat some of our most memorable encounters of places or subjects that Bill Maher encountered in Religulous. We could totally start there. I believe that person's name was...
we can start with the Truckers' Chapel, which the movie starts off with the fucking rich liberal comedian talking down to...
That's a great idea.
Yeah, he shows up at a truck stop where there's like a truck stop chapel that's basically a trailer, right? It's like a trailer chapel. It's pretty small, and everyone in there is clearly very genuine and appreciative of having a place on their trucking routes.
To just stop and see other people.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah. My grandpa was a career truck driver, and he said like if you ask him, did he like that job? He's like, no, of course not. It's like, it's so boring.
Right.
It's like just driving endlessly.
Right.
Yeah, that's not to say that that's everybody's experience, but like, you're not going to go to church in the middle of this as like, you want to be there and it's a meaningful time for you, and like to like be this rich liberal who like walks in and is like, you guys are dumb. You ever think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So he walks into, frankly, one of the most unique and interesting like churches I've personally ever seen. Like, I don't see, even if you're a fucking Hollywood atheist like scumbag or whatever, how do you not like look at this and say like, this place has like unique character? Like, this is a place that I've never seen before. How do you not at least at the very least have an appreciation for the novelty of this like quaint and beautiful and humble like place where people go, even if you think they're misguided? Like, here's a place where people go to get a tiny bit of like fellowship and community when they're bringing you your fucking like, I don't know, all the bread to Erewhon so you can like do your shopping or whatever.
Your right brand of bottled water.
Right. And they got your fucking alkaline water coming all the way from who knows where to Los Angeles, California, and they just want to fucking stop at this like little church along the way. But you're right. He goes in here and he's like, so by the way, you people are idiots.
It's a faith thing.
But why is faith good? Why is believing something without evidence good?
I don't like the way
Sure.
this thing's going. I don't know what this documentary is supposed to be, but I don't like where you're going. You start disputing my God, and you got a problem. I don't know what I'm out of here. You do what you want to do, but I'm out of here.
And he goes up on the pulpit like he's doing a stand-up special. And his like jokes are like the half-ass like, so the circumcision, that's a pretty crazy idea, right?
Yeah, and then the one guy he asks about why he's there, he's like, well, I used to be a Satanist for 30 years and I had like so much money and slept with lots of women and I didn't feel fulfilled, and like it was basically saying like, why would I stop doing that to go to this if it wasn't real? I had like a genuine experience.
Right. I walked for 30 years as a Satanist priest. From the time I grew up, I was in Satanism. For the last 6 years that I was in the Satanism, I was a Satanist priest. Okay?
Real Satanism?
Yes, real Satanism. Being addicted to drugs and running prostitutes and the women and everything that goes with that. I walked around with rolls of money in my pocket. I gave all that up when I got saved.
Yeah, another thing where it's just like, it just shows completely how intellectually uncurious Bill Maher is. If someone comes up to me on the street and is like, yeah, I was a Satanist priest for 30 years and like I had sex with so many women and I did drugs, my first thought would be like, all right, this person is insane. But I'd be like, please tell me about this. I want to know. Like how this is just another running theme in the film is, how do you not at least just want to genuinely ask someone what happened to you and have them tell you? He's not curious at all about people.
Because he's just an insane fucking narcissist idiot who like cannot listen and comprehend what people are saying to him. So he hears somebody say something like that, and he's not even like being like, yeah, either this guy's crazy, this guy's got a crazy life.
Yeah.
But, and both of those or one of those things could be true, or neither of them could be true. And instead he's like, yeah, I can definitely, get this guy to come around if I just be an asshole to him.
Right.
And I mean, actually, his goal is not to convince anybody of anything in this movie. His goal is to just be a prick.
Absolutely.
And just like, I don't know, try to provoke people to exterminate Islam from the world.
We will talk about how that is, spoiler alert, that is basically the final conclusion of this film.
The last 40 minutes of this movie.
But
Christians are idiots, but Muslims
evil.
are,
will kill you.
Right.
And they need to be wiped out before they wipe us out, essentially. We will get to that in a bit more depth later. But another really interesting encounter is the one you mentioned, Julian, which is the encounter with I believe his name is Jeremiah Cummings. That's what I wrote in my notes. I don't know a ton about him other than the documentary, but he appears to be a sort of a prosperity gospel type preacher. In the interview with Bill Maher, he says a bunch of things about like, by accepting God into your life, you invite financial success into your life, which sounds a lot like prosperity gospel preachers. Mm-hmm. He also happens to be a Black American. This is worth noting because Bill Maher peppers their conversation with things like, hey, you're keeping it real, man? Like all this fucking shit that.
And then
like
also
refers
cuts
to his
in
jewelry as bling.
Yeah.
So
and then cuts in clips of like pimps from 70s movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Bill Maher also famously, sorry to interrupt.
No.
Bill Maher also famously a couple years ago referred to himself as a house N-word on his show.
What the fuck?
What?
He got into a lot of trouble with it.
I
Yeah,
kind
he
of
was
remember
interviewing like a Republican senator or something. And the guy said, I just looked it up, and the guy, Ben Sassy, he wrote, or he said something like, hey, you can come up to Nebraska and work in the fields with us, like as a metaphor. And Bill Maher said, I won't work in the fields. I'm a house N-word, sir. So totally even in context, makes it even worse because there's just absolutely no reason for him to be making jokes like that.
What a pig man.
Yeah, he's a disgusting human being.
Really?
Jesus Christ.
He also says, I have in my notes, at one point, so Bill.
Oh, also, he excuses all of this behavior because he loves to sleep with Black women. That is literally his excuse.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah,
Wow.
definitely doesn't even further just dehumanize another race.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Just completely objectify it. Wow.
Yeah, I have in my notes. So he's trying to do in this interview is talk about the hypocrisy of prosperity gospel. I think a very valid thing to criticize.
Lots to talk about.
Yeah, so much to talk about.
Yeah.
You could have a whole. I'm sure there are people who've made good, compelling documentaries on that. This is not one of them.
Just even Preachers and Sneakers, that Instagram account, does a great job
That's
pointing
a really
out the
good point.
hypocrisy
Yeah,
there.
that alone is so much more of a powerful critique of this culture than anything accomplished in this documentary. But at one point, Jeremiah Cummings says, Bill Maher asks him, like, why are you wearing a $2,000 suit? Why are you wearing bling bling? And Jeremiah Cummings says, basically, like, people like to see him dressed well. He's trying to say, like, it adds to the, it looks good. People like to see me look good. And Bill Maher says, I swear to God, he says, like, but isn't that what a pimp says about his prostitute?
People in a congregation must know that the outfit was financed by their donations, and it doesn't seem to bother them.
I always dress well.
I see.
So it's not
Those
that
gators?
those are lizards.
Lizards.
Yes.
Where do they run?
They don't run, they crawl.
And I see you got a lot of bling.
I like gold. The people want you to look well.
That's what pimps say about their women.
Which I just want to say
No
that
coincidence
makes no
that
sense.
he's saying
Yeah.
this stuff to the black guy.
The
in the
only
movie.
But personally, I don't really agree with like prosperity churches.
Not at all.
Just in concept, I think it's pretty
Yeah.
fucked up.
It's extremely fucked up.
But Mr. Cummings did make a good one, I think, where he said that, well, Jesus was given gold right when he was born.
That made me
He had
laugh.
fancy,
I loved
he had
that.
fancy stuff.
That's very
I
true.
started my gospel with a small loan of 1 gold.
He moves on then. The next
Bill Maher fucking sucks.
he sucks so bad. But this is very cathartic for me. I'm enjoying myself. One of the next people he speaks to is an ex-gay. He talks to a man who is,
And we're not talking about the new X-Men series.
ex-gay is the one who wears that the visor, right?
Yeah.
I think
that's
so.
ex-gay.
Yeah.
So he talks to a man who is a former homosexual who runs, I think, some kind of like ministry or possibly like conversion therapy. Again, I hope it goes without saying, it's supremely fucked up. I do not in any way, let's just unequivocally go on the record, I do not in any way condone gay conversion therapy. But
But this goes to what we were saying at the top, where it's like, if you don't like Trump, you must like Bill Maher.
Right.
Where it's like, both things can be wrong.
and they are. They are many times in this documentary. In my notes, I have written, Bill, leave this poor gay guy alone.
Yeah. And we should also make clear that oftentimes the people he is interviewing are much, much worse and more harmful to the world than Bill Maher is.
Yeah, one could argue.
Yeah,
Depends on your level.
And we don't know everybody's full reach.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
really the thing. Yeah, ideologically, maybe. I mean, one could
Yeah.
argue that like Bill Maher actually has the platform to do like
He
real
is the
harm.
star
whereas
of this.
This,
Yeah.
one ex-gay freak who like maybe has a website that people find Googling. Like, yeah, that really sucks.
He's
but it's like,
perpetuating a like mode of thinking that people think is progressive.
Right.
But
Right.
it's so much more
which is very
regressive.
which that part is dangerous.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to make that value judgment. However, I would definitely have it's very let me just again state unequivocally before I'm an irony boy for the next 10 minutes that it disturbs me profoundly to hear about gay men talk about their so-called conversion experiences. It's a very difficult
And actually,
horrible thing.
this was one part where Bill made one good point where he says that Jesus never talked about. I don't remember exactly how he said it, but Jesus never talked about like negatively or otherwise like homosexuality at all.
Yeah, as far as I know, that's true. I've read the Gospels quite a bit. There's nothing about homosexuality in there. It really does, as far as I know, seem relegated to the Old Testament.
Yeah. Just like in Fireproof, how Jesus also never talked about marriage or the secrets to a successful marriage.
As far as I know, Jesus did not reveal 50 secrets to a successful marriage in the gospel. Maybe that's one of the lost gospels. It's hard to say. In the
50
canonical
Shades of
Bible,
Love.
he
That's
did.
what they should have called it.
But yeah, he's talking to this former gay guy. I messaged, I'm in this alt edgy Christian group DM on Twitter, and I messaged them that I was watching this, and my friend Nick in the chat said, Nick of Christians Mingle podcast said that he'd saw this movie, and he said that the interview with the gay guy struck him because it's just Bill Maher saying, essentially, not obviously word for word, but he's basically saying to the guy, so you look and act like a faggot, right?
Yeah,
that's his thing.
I don't know, but honestly, if I just saw you in a bar or something, I would say, and don't take this the wrong way, I would say, yeah, I think that guy's gay. You're good looking. You're neat. You don't look like me.
Meaning?
I mean, meaning...
Also, Bill is so and he is a friend of mine, so I call him Bill. He's so rigid. He complains so much about these people being rigid in their worldviews, but he is so rigid and old-fashioned in his way of thinking that he speaks to other gay people later in the movie, and all he can talk about is anal sex and blowjobs.
I didn't even think about that.
It's he clearly also cannot speak about things in terms of sexuality being a spectrum too.
Right.
He could never present to this guy, this believer in conversion therapy, and that somebody can be gay and then be turned to being straight. He can't speak to him in maybe terms of yeah, well, maybe some days you're more attracted to men or other days you're more attracted to women. It's just all rigid in his own way that he's my rigid way of thinking is correct and yours is wrong.
And that's how he is throughout the entire thing.
It's so fundamental
about everything. He does not. Yeah, it's so fundamentalist. He does not understand the concept of a spectrum in any capacity for anything.
No.
Yeah. Granted, this movie is 13 years old, so society as a whole has changed a little bit. But this is also a 50-year-old man making this movie.
Exactly, and yeah, I mean, first of all, he is a religious fundamentalist. His religion does not have a direct name. You could maybe say his religion is American liberalism, but for the sake of things, his religion doesn't have a name, but he is a fundamentalist.
He's a white Jewish American exceptionalist.
Yes.
Because that is the only type of person who goes completely unscathed in this movie.
Yes. Well, we'll have something to say a little more about that too.
He's very close-minded.
Yes. But no, but that goes to your point. Yeah, this movie is 13 years old. However, we've all know, Bill has to know, or maybe he doesn't because he doesn't care about other people, but I know people who regardless of how they sexually identify, there was a period of their life where they were attracted to men, and then there was a period when they were attracted to women, and then blah blah blah. It's that's very just common in general, even before all this quote unquote newfangled identity discourse or whatever. You know what I mean? That's a very common human experience. I'm sure it's been that way through time.
Read some French literature.
Although I will say that the ex-gay guy did make some really good points. He did say gay people are not happy. I really appreciated when he said that. He also said something I really agreed with. He said that gay people are fundamentally incomplete. And I have to say, I was nodding my head a little bit when he said that. So I'm glad that Bill promoted, he let people sort of speak important truths.
Broken clocks, right, twice a day.
Right. Also, somewhere early on, he's just telling people oh, I think this might have been at the trucker chapel where he says there's no proof of Jesus' existence, and they're what are you talking about? And then he doesn't say.
Right.
He doesn't give any further information.
No, he doesn't.
Because it's just presumed that the audience agrees with Bill going into this movie. So no matter what he says, it's we're always going to be listen to these idiots. Yeah. We don't even have to see the argument because as soon as they present their view, we'll just laugh.
Yes. Yeah.
And cut to the next thing.
We all have the same assumed knowledge, which doesn't that sound like a lot of the movies that we watch for this podcast?
Yeah. And then he talks to the gay Reformation priest or he's not a priest.
Yeah, I can't remember what he was. I think he was just like a minister.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The straight guy. He talks to the straight guy
talks to a
about
straight
like Christian hypocrisy and stuff. And that is a totally legitimate religious hypocrisy is like a totally legitimate thing to like discuss and
Absolutely.
critique, but he just throws it in with this whole like idea of all religion is stupid. Like it's just stupid to believe in a religion.
Right.
And you are never going to reach out to a religious person. Like you're never going to be able to connect with a religious person about hypocrisy in their religion if your jumping off point is just like religion's stupid and I'm eventually going to get you to that point.
Yes.
Like, so let's be upfront here.
Right.
Like by the end of this movie, you're going to think that Christianity as a whole is stupid and there are no redeeming qualities.
Yeah. It's a very deep. It's a very deep assumption. It's very judgmental, as Bill Maher just throws into any of his conversations. He's like, "Well, that's pretty judgmental of you to say that, right?"
Yeah.
It just like is.
And of course, at no point does he interviews one person who's sort of like the guy in the Vatican,
Right.
who's like joking around.
Yeah.
But all he does is just joke around and be like, "Yeah, I wouldn't have this giant." Like Jesus wouldn't be living in the Vatican; he'd be living in the hills in like a cave. Right. And it's like, and he's just treated as this like one-off guy.
Yeah,
it's like at no point do they ever interview like any like like Christian charity organization that runs like a food bank or anything or like whatever. Like
or even how about a Christian comedian, somebody on the same level.
That would be fun.
Some one-liners with, or
that would be fun. Yeah, fucking riff a little bit.
Yeah,
or even just like many of the Christian Universalist commentators, like many of the like very famous, respected, like published, like people who've written on like Christian Reformation, somewhat liberal Christianity. I mean, obviously, these. I can think of like several people like right now who have like really good podcasts that like, I mean, again, this movie's 13 years old, but it's just like, there's an array of voices out there who Bill could have had on to have obviously like a much more like touching and nuanced talk about religion.
Not everybody who's religious is in a doomsday cult either, which is like, basically, does he like actually straight up say that? I mean, he basically does.
Yeah. By the end of the movie, yeah.
In the beginning of the film, he says that religion is detrimental to the project of humanity. At the end of the movie, he says that religion will bring about like the death of humanity because of like nuclear warfare. It's like that is absolutely like baked into the movie. It's basically saying by participating in religion whatsoever, you are like supporting the end of the world.
Yeah.
Like basically.
Plain fact is, religion must die for mankind to live. The hour is getting very late to be able to indulge in having key decisions made by religious people, by irrationalists, by those who would steer the ship of state not by a compass, but by the equivalent of reading the entrails of a chicken.
And as we all know, there are no bad atheists.
Right.
Yeah. Seen through the Gospels of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
Non-religious people are all good.
Yeah,
right.
You can't just cherry pick atheists to point out how terrible they are.
Oh man, we interviewed noted atheist Jeffrey Epstein for Religulous. There's, we're going long on this one, fellas. I'm having a good time. But
we're not even halfway through the movie.
I know. I will say some maybe fun, but maybe less notable interviews. He tells a guy in Jews for Jesus to kill himself.
Right.
Remember that
was
part?
fun.
That was so dope.
Always fun to hear somebody tell someone to kill themselves.
He was
that was the antique shop guy, right?
Yes.
He's like,
Yeah.
if you're so sure you're going to go to heaven, then just why don't you kill yourself now?
100% sure that after you die, you'll go to a better place.
I know I'll be with God. I'll be with Jesus.
And that's a better place.
Even if it was in a garbage can, which I know it won't be, but even if it was, just the fact that I'm with Jesus, to me, is good.
Is a better place.
It's a better place.
Then why don't you kill yourself?
Yeah, he literally was just
Yeah.
like, so why don't you kill yourself? And the guy looked like so obviously hurt because like some guy points a camera in your face and tells you to kill yourself. How is this fucking
And his whole
different from
crew is
like,
probably like snickering off camera too.
Yeah.
Right.
Bill Maher should check out this great website called 4chan where I think they have the same level of humor as he does.
yes, the same level of ideology and the same level of humor. Like absolutely. Honestly, on 4chan, there's way more proliferation of diverse viewpoints.
Yeah, more nuance there.
It absolutely is.
Also, not all the time, but I would say most of the time a lot funnier than Bill Maher.
Oh, 100%. As someone who posted there from the ages of 18 to 22, I completely agree that is the case.
Oh, with that guy too in the antique shop, he compared Santa to God, which is just like a fundamental refusal to understand the difference between
Jesus Christ.
He kicks so
This
much
guy,
ass.
like just zero effort in sort of understanding, like doing any research into anything or trying to like reach a point of understanding with people who have different viewpoints from you.
Yeah.
And you know it's going to start off that way because it starts about like, oh, I was raised, my mother was Jewish and my father was Catholic.
Right.
And I'm half Jewish and half Catholic. And it's such a zany world. So I'm going to so it's up to me to get to the bottom of religion.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Specifically Western religions. Right. We won't be talking about anything else in the world. Nope. But I assure you, all those are evil too.
Yes.
Also, and even starting with talking to his mom, like she had a very common American experience of like, well, you just kind of pick one and we do this thing. And
yeah,
extremely common.
Yeah.
We didn't have the internet, so we didn't have anything to do in our spare time.
Yeah, that's where your community is. It like builds routine, like gives you a couple hours in a space where you don't have to like calm down your maniac child who wears a pistol on their hip at all times.
Yes. Yeah, I said when we were watching, when he was like, oh yeah, I'm half Jewish and half Catholic, I said, the only person who that's ever happened to, by the way.
Yeah.
That's the way, that is sort of the way he presented it. Obviously he didn't say it in those words, but that was sort of the tone with which he presented it. A bunch of things. I mean, we talked about his talk with Ken Ham already. I will say the Creation Museum looks like it kicks so much ass. That is definitely my long-term goal with our show, is that one day we will do an on-the-ground report at the Creation Museum, because I want to go there so bad. And another place that I want to go so bad is the Holy Land amusement park in Orlando, Florida.
The
which
Holy Land experience.
I had never heard of that.
Yeah.
Oh, were you gonna?
I was gonna say, just in terms of the Creation Museum,
yes,
like liberals and atheists really got to get over the creationism versus evolution.
Yes,
thing.
good point.
Like that's
so
like
annoying.
The powers that be getting you to argue about like immigrants taking your job while they like craft the nuclear bombs to blow you up with.
Absolutely.
Like ignore it. It doesn't, whether or not creationism or evolution is correct, like it's going to have zero impact on your life.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. It's so true. It's like at the end of the day, yeah, who cares if the person fucking, I don't know, bagging your groceries or whatever, like believes that dinosaurs existed at the same time as humans, or they believe like, lizard people like came to Earth they hopped from the planet Anunnaki or whatever. It's like that doesn't really like fundamentally impact whether or not evolution is true. Does not really impact your life.
And it doesn't mean that there's not a God.
Exactly. That's the other thing too, because that's my personal belief, is that I believe in evolution. I believe in these things. But yeah, to like what you said, Scott, you went on our friend Snoopy's podcast and you talked about Genesis, and like I think that the two of you had a really good discussion and made the point that like really like what does the idea that God created the earth in 7 days, there's really nothing. Yeah, it uses the frame of measurement 7 days, but there's really nothing in there that's like at odds with the facts of what we know about like, or the facts in air quotes of what we know about like evolution and like the creation of Earth over time. Like it's an arbitrary like time measurement. It's not in conflict with anything science has learned necessarily. You know?
It's it just plays right into the classic like that we see throughout this movie, the classic non-religious liberal sort of like, oh, I'm the smartest guy in the world until it comes to metaphor. In which case I take everything I ever read that I don't agree with literally.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yes. And actually, that one thing I wanted to mention, speaking of metaphor, is that for whatever reason, a running theme of this documentary is him talking to people whom English is not their first language, but they have graciously agreed to do an interview in English with him. He spends a lot of time in Amsterdam with a couple different people. And so much of the documentary is him like speaking in like idioms, like him being like, and I think you can get the picture about that, pal. And just like saying things like, we know what the phrase like get the picture means, but like someone who English is their second language, they might not immediately, like it takes sometimes people time to like process when you're a fucking like smug liberal dude like rapid firing like quips at them, and like then it, like they kind of laugh nervously and have their like eyes open, and like the camera does the editing does the like kooky music thing. It's like they don't even know what they're talking about. It's like,
shows a
motherfucker,
close-up of them looking confused. And you're
right.
like,
It's like, motherfucker, they know 2 languages. How many do you know? Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's insane. And mind you, some of those people he was doing that to were like gay Muslims operating like a Muslim gay bar, like in face of like persecution and stuff. And he goes there and he's like, aren't these guys fucking dummies? Because they don't speak English. It's like, what the fuck? But anyway.
2 strikes against you. Yeah. Number 1, you don't speak English. Number 2, you're Muslim.
Right.
What are you doing?
Right.
Back to the Holy Land experience, though.
Please.
That place was pretty cool. They had some good shows there. And probably, I guess I can't really say the best interview Bill had, but the best interview Bill had that he actually let stay on screen for an extended period of time was with the guy who plays Jesus at the Holy Land experience, who I can only assume he won that argument.
Yes, he won.
He won it because, he won right off the bat because Bill was trying to debate a guy who plays Jesus.
Great.
Yes.
Well, yes.
And was very clearly like starting to think that he was actually speaking for Jesus.
Yes. Yeah. Like,
he has to stay in character, Julian.
Yes. Well, yeah, to go back to like the Santa comparison, that's like if you went up to like a department store mall Santa and were like, so you're telling me you really go to every house in one night? Like, it's like what? That's like legitimately the tone of the interview. Bill's like, so Jesus, like a lot of people recognize you when you go out. And it's like, he's like joking to set up the interview. But then as the interview goes on, I started to think, is Bill joking? Like, does he actually think he's talking to Jesus? Like, he might be. Very, very troubling.
Yeah.
Holy Land looks sick.
Totally.
The musicals that are being presented, and like while there's like people with like headset mics singing while like a bloody Jesus is like put on a cross and the cross is like revealed on the top of a hillside. I was like, I would legitimately be like crying.
Yeah.
I would, not to sound like a Hollywood liberal, but I would love to do like an edible and go to the Holy Land exhibit. And, like,
that's the only way to do it.
Oh my God. That's a dream for me. I really hope we can do it sometime.
When Bill was, I guess, debating with Jesus at the Holy Land experience, he was like asking like the basic, like, why do bad things happen in some capacity?
Right.
And he said, that's like trying to explain to an ant how a TV works.
Oh, that was cool.
That was dope.
Wait, did you mention that it was about the Holocaust?
Oh, was that?
Yeah. It was specifically in response to Bill asking if everything is in God's will, why did the Holocaust happen?
Right.
And the Jesus actor said that's like explaining how a television works to an ant.
Yeah, he's saying that like we don't understand God's plan. Yeah. To try to understand God's plan is like like that.
But I know that he is so far and beyond any of our ways that he can work the worst situation for his good.
What was the Holocaust? Why was that good?
God had a plan for that. Maybe it's to cause.
I wonder if you would have thought that if
evil.
you were one of the people being pushed into an oven.
Well, you know what? It's like trying to explain to an ant how a TV works. That's God's ways are so much higher than ours. There's no way you can understand that.
stop the interview for just a moment, please.
Nice to see you.
Senior Manager, Public Relations.
Hi,
Les,
sure.
I'll be right with you.
This man who portrayed Jesus, let us emphasize, at a theme park, was able to bring that up. Also, shout outs to the guy who plays Jesus for doing the best metaphor. He did but can you see the wind?
Yeah.
Yes.
The wind.
Yes.
I love that. Every time that happens in any Christian thing, I get so excited. I love when Christians do but you believe in the wind and you can't see it. I'm like, got him. Got his ass, Jesus. Great job.
He tried to make a point too. So this, for when he's talking to Jesus, this is the first and last time he uses like real historical information about like why you might question Jesus and modern Christianity in general, in that he was bringing up similarities to other historical deities,
Right.
with like their death and resurrection, birthdays being on the 25th, and he like really focused on the fact that like these other people had birthdays on the 25th too.
Right.
But like when I was growing up at church, that was like, I was taught that that's like not actually his birthday. That's just the
Yes.
day we celebrate because we don't know his actual birthday.
Yes. I was never
Right.
under the impression, even as a little kid, going to a Lutheran church, but actually when I grew up, the church I originally grew up in, it was actually somewhat fundamentalist. Like there were people in the church who didn't believe in evolution, etc. I still never believed as a little kid, even with a simplified scripture being told to me, I never literally believed that Jesus's birthday was on December 25th.
It's like your cat's birthday.
Right.
You don't know when it actually is. You just pick a day.
Right. Yes. So in one of the most memorable encounters that really like sets up to me like the second half of the movie and basically begins to set up what I actually think is like the driving mission of the movie, Bill Maher talks to a man who I will start by saying is a psychopath. This guy, he is, again, I cannot necessarily support this man's views. However, the way it is framed, I think you'll agree, gentle listener, is like extremely cynical, and
Especially in
weird.
light of recent events.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, watching this now almost seemed like faded because it was just like way too like on the nose for discourse that's happening right now. Bill Maher talks to a Jewish man, an Orthodox Jew, and he
A
begins,
rabbi, no less.
a rabbi.
I can't find anything that says he's an actual rabbi.
Oh,
okay.
shit.
Yeah.
So
He might just call himself a rabbi.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a rabbi in just the sense of teacher.
Yeah,
He taught me a lot, I will say.
well,
that's-
Bill typed that word on the screen.
Okay,
so.
yeah. Maybe he is, yeah.
It could be his emphasis. He introduces the interview by saying, I am talking to one of the few Jewish people in the world who is an anti-Zionist.
You are one of the few Jewish people in the world who does not believe in the state of Israel. You do not think the state of Israel should exist.
Correct.
Okay.
So, audience, if you ever run into a Jew who does not
Yes.
support the state of Israel, then they're just as crazy as this guy.
Yes.
But it's also admitting he's intentionally getting like fringe people, if that's what he really thinks.
right.
Yes.
Right. He's
True
very
again.
he's very selective about how he represents the fringe in his documentary.
Of course, yes. Because if you are a Jew who doesn't support the state of Israel, then you must also be a Holocaust denier
Yes.
Yeah.
and a supporter of like Ahmadinejad's government
Yes.
in Iran at the time.
Yes. First of all, what's the name of this man? Is that
Yisrael David Weiss.
Oh, okay. I
So,
have him.
Yeah, David
Oh,
Weiss.
yes. David Weiss. Yes, I see him on Wikipedia.
He's
now.
a piece of shit. Let's not cut
Yeah.
corners. He sucks.
Absolutely. This is a man who, to be fair, appears to be a Jewish Holocaust denier, although he has family that died in the Holocaust.
Well, what I was reading from his, okay, he did speak in 2006. He participated in, I don't know if he spoke, but he participated in the International Conference to Review the Global Vision of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
With which featured speakers like David Duke, as well as numerous Holocaust deniers and anti-Semites from Europe.
Yeah.
So he, that might be where he was stripped of his rabbi title. So yeah, this guy, not cool, not a cool guy, but he does not deny that the Holocaust happened.
Right. And also, this documentary, first of all, frames him in a completely false way. And this going back to what is the biggest flaw of this documentary. He frames him in a completely false way, doesn't let him speak a sentence. Like, legitimately, he says like 4 words and Bill Maher interrupts and the guy's like, let me finish.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Maher just does not let him finish. And then ends the interview by going, Bill Maher, I will say, ends the interview by going, you know what? We're done here. I'm out. He fucking throws a tantrum and walks out of his own interview.
You can hear the director asking him to sit back down. And he's like, no, I can't take it anymore. Because this guy is not like pledging his blind loyalty to the state of Israel.
Right.
As a Jew.
That's chutzpah.
Never again, Rabbi, never again.
What was that?
No. I'm out.
Right. So now we get into the thing where it's like, so to ignore the weird context about this guy, which is undeniable, the rest of the interview is very disturbing. Bill Maher basically just refuses to hear anything other than the fact that Israel must be set up for the safety of Jewish people. In Bill Maher's own words, basically the Jewish people cannot be safe unless there is a Jewish state. And anyone who basically thinks otherwise, not even necessarily like, thinks that I'm not Jewish. I don't have like any dog in this fight. I don't normally like speak on it, but it's just like it felt very bizarre to me for Bill Maher to be like, if you have any criticism of Israel, it means you think that Jewish people should not be safe and like there should be Holocaust Part 2.
Yeah.
That was I think a fair summary of what he was implying in this interview.
Well, he never lets the guy say exactly why
Right.
he shouldn't support Israel.
Right.
And he never and like it's one thing to say like Jewish people should be safe. Yeah. As personally as a Jew, Jewish people are one of the most despised people in the history of the world and like represent a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of the world's population, which is, of course, most Jewish people live in Los Angeles, New York, and Israel.
Right.
So we see a lot of them. What we see is not really representative of the world.
That's true.
Yeah.
That being said, just because Jewish people don't deserve to be killed at every turn in history doesn't mean that we can't question how the Jewish state functions and how the government that runs that Jewish state, which is also criticized by its own citizens within itself.
Right.
Who might be, being exploited or hurt through that state's actions. At no point are the words Palestine or Palestinians ever mentioned during this interview.
Sure.
Or even shown on camera, except for at one point, I think Bill does mention the word Hamas, and they show a bunch of people holding like AK-47s in the air and shooting them.
Yeah.
Which, say what you will about Hamas, but I don't think that's really representative of Palestinian people as a whole.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Just like any fringe view, on the Hamas does not represent Palestinians.
Yeah. Last I checked, Bill Maher didn't support the war in Iraq despite being an American.
Right.
So,
which honestly kind of surprises me given the tone of this documentary.
Well, he doesn't support the war in Iraq, but he does support the peaceful eradication of all Muslims from Earth.
Yeah, he literally, I would say, and we'll get to this in just a moment, advocates for Muslim
through
genocide.
his own struggle sessions of his like stand-up specials.
I would
He's
say
going to force an auditorium full of Muslims to sit through one of his stand-up specials, and if you don't break down crying, admitting to all your crimes.
Yes, but to summarize, in his conversation with David Weiss, he claims that to have a criticism of the state of Israel is a fringe belief that only a few Jewish people in the community have. He also equates this fringe belief with straight up Holocaust denial. And he also, through his like stage, like dramatic walk off, basically implies that even trying to start this conversation is just like completely off limits. In his whole like nothing, I can like talk to a gay guy about butt fucking, like blah blah blah. I can do this, whatever, but don't you dare say anything bad about Israel. Any decent person would not want to hear
Fucking
this.
Gallagher's walk off of WTF was more principled than this walk off. Yeah. Once again, at no point can you ever criticize power and how power works in this documentary.
Right. A bit more on that as we get into the
because of course the state of Israel the safety of the Jewish people is you have to have like $1 trillion war machine like the United States backing it, sending it missiles, sending it the most advanced killing machines in human history.
And you have to support far right leader Netanyahu, whose son has like been caught like trading like Holocaust memes and like all this shit. Like it's like the guy and his family are like fucking weird. Like I think that's like unequivocal. Like a very, very strange situation. Let's just say over there. It's a land of contrast, I think, for sure. Probably a bit more to say on that as we wrap up with some of the talk about the anti-Muslim rhetoric in this film. Just to sort of breeze through this a bit, Maher does talk to a man who believes or purports to be the second coming of Christ. This man is a Spanish speaker primarily, of course.
Puerto Rican, I believe.
Yes, he's Puerto Rican. Of course, Bill Maher insults him in not his first language, and then it's clear the guy just like doesn't really process what he's saying, but his editing team edits in clips of Scarface to make it seem like this guy's like an angry like Latino gangster who like wants to kill him during the
Yes, Al Pacino, a non-Latinx person playing a Cuban.
Yeah. So that, we don't really like that.
No one is safe.
No one's safe.
Except for, white Jewish people.
Right.
Honestly, the only time he ever criticizes Jewish people are the one craziest Jewish guy he could find in all of America.
Yes.
And also at one point he mentions like to the neuroscientists, he says something like, and Orthodox Jews, they're a little cuckoo. And that's it.
Right. And
then 45 minutes of Islam is a religion of murder.
Yes. And notably, when he brings up the conflict in the religious sites, that one place where it's like both Muslims and Jews lay claim to this one specific religious site. I'm letting my ignorance show by not knowing the two names of the sites.
The Dome of the Rock.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when he's presenting that scenario, he only lays critiques of like the Muslim view of it. Like
for building a wall to keep.
Yeah, he's like, and the Muslims had to build a wall to keep the Jews out. He's like, the Orthodox Jews, they just want to be buried on. They just want to have their graveyard on this hill, but the Muslims had to build a wall.
Whatever you do, don't turn 30 degrees to your left, where you will see a Palestinian family's home being firebombed.
Right. So that is like, I think really, really shows. I do want to say quick before we get to that. One very quick moment that was very odd. I don't know why he really put this in there. But he talks about it's just a personal experience. Bill Maher's riding in a car, not wearing a seatbelt for some reason. He doesn't wear a seatbelt throughout the entire movie.
It really upset me.
It was very strange. Like, why? It was very like noticeable.
Please, Lord, take him. From us.
We thought
deliver us from Bill Maher.
The irony that God, I would say the most conclusive proof that God doesn't exist is that he allowed this entire documentary to be made while Bill Maher was driving around the country not wearing a seatbelt, and somehow no harm came to Bill and the documentary was able to be finished. If you wanted to make a strong atheist argument, I'd say that's about as strong as any.
I'd say that's a good argument for how truly patient and merciful God is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe someday Bill Maher will see the light.
But there is a quick scene in the car where Bill Maher said,
I was still making deals with God when I was 40. I remember I quit smoking. There was some shitty problem I had in my life, and I made a deal with God. Okay, if you make this problem go away, I will quit smoking, and I won't go back on it because I know that I'd be going back on a deal with God. And you know, I gotta say, I'm kind of glad I had God in my life.
why do you think he put that in? Was he actually trying to show a little bit of like self-reflection and like, you know, or was he trying to like make a point that like God is just something you call on arbitrarily?
I got the idea that he was so sure of himself that he thought that we would not like make a connection of like, oh, well, that's like a good reason for believing in God.
Right.
Yeah.
And would do what you said, just you call on God arbitrarily for random things.
Right.
I think I think it was a way of being like, yeah, we all call upon God when
Right.
we need to make like a vow.
Right.
Or like need something to lean on. But that's the only acceptable way to be religious, is the way that I do it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, pretty amazing. I mean, I just thought that was just, it was just
This is so
confounding.
not funny.
It's confounding. Well, I think we should probably move into the final big leg of this, which we've already, to be fair, brought up, which is that the final leg of the film is just straight up anti-Muslim propaganda.
It's crazy.
It's honestly crazy. I really didn't expect to be so shocked by this movie. I thought it was going to be stupid and boring and, you know, I mean, to be fair, I don't really follow a lot of Maher's work. I was open-minded to the idea that he might do it with like, I don't know, a sense of humor or like some kind of self-awareness, which like, you know, even if I don't agree with someone, if they sort of, you know, there's things you can do in storytelling that make me at least like empathize with you a little bit. He did not do those. This last fucking 40 minutes of the film was supporting like Muslim genocide, basically. It was crazy.
I had forgotten that was like part of his identity.
Right.
Just like a thing about him is that he's like a super anti-Muslim guy.
Yes.
As like a lot of atheist thinkers in the early or the late 2000s became just like straight up Islamophobes.
Yes.
Because it was like their way of processing how other people process imperialism and colonialism and having all of your like natural resources violently depleted from you.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it must be the religion that is the problem, not all other factors in the world.
Right. And in the process of making this point, he speaks to people who are very like brave, like that one oh man, I had to go back to the wiki page with the cast interviews. That one female Muslim activist, Fatima Elatic. She is okay, her wiki page is in Dutch, but she appears to be some sort of political figure in the Netherlands. I don't know her exact role. He like is talking to in a country where he also interviews that one.
What an apt metaphor. A white American guy goes to other countries and tells them why they're wrong.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So he also interviews the Dutch politician, the leader of the Party for Freedom, Geert Wilders, who is an explicitly anti-Muslim politician. He says,
so
I believe that
strange.
he says he just, with no criticism or anything, Bill Maher lets Wilders say like, yeah, I believe that Islam is a religion of death. and violence.
I'm here with Geert Wilders here in The Hague, which of course is home to the World Court, but also to the Dutch Parliament. You are taking a kind of hard line here in the Netherlands.
Islam is, according to me, a violent religion. The Quran is a violent book, and Muhammad was a violent prophet.
You think Islam wants to take over the world?
They don't even make
They
make
don't
a secret about it.
Yeah.
We are infidels. I mean, we should either become Islamic or we should be killed. This is what they say. This is what they are proud of.
No comment. Cuts to the next scene. Him talking to a Muslim activist, a female Muslim activist within the country that is led by people who believe that like Islam is a death religion. And she's trying to be like, well, you know, like for me, Islam is not about that. It's like I find a lot of like internal peace. And he's just like, well, have you read the Quran? Like it is.
Yeah. Has he read the Quran?
No. Like, I mean, it's like, it's insane. There was no fundamental political difference between this film and any of the fucking Christian films we've watched with Muslim characters to this point.
Yeah.
Like, also funny that it comes from the guy who a few years later would say the N-word on television and then have to be like, I'm not racist. You're just cherry picking something I said.
Right. I just, the film that came to mind is Let There Be Light, the Sorbo film, where they talk, the whole rhetoric of the film is like Islam is a religion of death. Like, we need to show light because Islam is a religion of darkness. There is no fundamental political difference between Bill Maher and the Sorbos.
No.
And it's just like insane because like this guy is like, again, purporting to be like the face of liberal as he's a liberal. He's to the left in the binary of our country. He's a conservative. Like, it doesn't matter that he's not Christian. Like, he is a straight up politically conservative man. It's like insane. The Overton window of like left and right in our country is just like so insane to me.
He would love, who's the senator he talks to that he just like, whenever he has to have a response, he does the thing where he just cuts out the response and puts them like listening so it looks like they're stupid.
It's the Arkansas fucking senator. It should be here. Mark Pryor.
Yes, I'm sure they have more things that they believe in common than that they disagree with. It's just that one of them says y'all and the other one says everything in an extremely obnoxious, snarky way.
Yes. Yeah.
If Trump was
y'all, are you dumb? I don't say that.
Yeah. If George W. Bush was like a fucking on Comedy Central's premium blend in 1998 and that was the way he held all of his press conferences, Bill Maher would be like, yeah, the best president ever.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, kill all the Muslims.
Yes. Well, that's what's so crazy. Yeah, because you're right. They use stock footage of George W. Bush saying his classic, Bushisms to be like, look how crazy the religious right of this country are. And then the documentary is like, yeah, we should exterminate the Muslims. Like, it's like, what is the fucking fundamental like political difference between these parties, between these ideologies? It's insane to me.
If you've not seen this and it sounds like we are just making a sudden shift in tone, that's because the documentary does.
It really does. I was
at about 50 minutes in, it just straight up becomes
style changes too.
Yeah,
it really does. It becomes fucking propaganda. They start showing like dead bodies in the streets and like car bombs and like fucking like rockets and like Arabic or Arab looking like militants with like machine guns. It's fucking crazy. Legitimately, we haven't watched a Christian film yet that was as anti-Muslim as this film. I could not believe it. I really couldn't believe it.
Not even close.
And also, I mean, again, I consider myself, I've had to build up a pretty good like irony defense mechanism. And I really was just like, I'm just gonna watch this whole thing and be like, yeah, this movie fucking rocked, as I usually do. But like, this is just like, I'm really like dumbfounded by it. When he fucking, I said this already, but when he goes to the Muslim gay bar and he's like saying to the guys like, oh yeah, you guys are pretty dumb for still being Muslim while you're gay, right? Like, are you fucking kidding me, man?
Or instead of being like, wow, you guys like really believe this. You have a really strong sense of belief. Like, because I can't understand why you would still be Muslim after going through what you've gone through. I mean, he doesn't try to engage at all or like bring up anything.
And he makes fun of them because there's like not that many people in their bar when he's like doing the interview. He's like, I guess there's not a lot of gay Muslims coming out tonight, right? It's like a fucking persecuted minority. Mind you, you have just spoken to a politician, a mainstream politician who has said, I believe that Islam is a religion of death.
Yeah.
And then
you're
you're
also
like,
just putting these guys' images on your
right,
nationwide released film.
Right.
Yeah.
Under false circumstances.
Yeah.
By the way, I do want to say that like I reach out to like a Christian guest to do interviews on the show. We haven't really gotten like a lot of people yet, but like and I'm still trying to figure out like exactly how to do that. But I like to say in my like when I'm approaching people, I like to say like, you know, we are a podcast that we watch these Christian media and we are sometimes, you know, like critical of it. Like I don't go into too much depth, but I like to say, I just think that's like the honest thing to say up front. But but I'm saying to the person, I'm like, we want to have like, I never would bring we never would bring someone onto our show just so we could fucking Bill Maher at them. Like that is like so insane.
Well,
so it's just, it's so troubling and like anti-journal. I mean, I know he doesn't even care if he's a journalist, but it's like so anti-journalistic for him to like lie and be like, oh, I'm doing a documentary about religion and then get people there and fucking gotcha them.
And
really unethical. It's not
the
cool.
same
stick.
It's the same director as Borat, the first one. And Larry Clark, I think is his name.
Larry Charles.
Oh, Larry Charles.
Yeah, Larry Clark.
You're thinking of Larry Clark.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops. Larry
Shout-outs.
Charles. He did the first Borat movie, and he also has a pretty good series on Netflix about like comedy in other countries.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
that
He's
doesn't
cool.
excuse the rampant Islamophobia in this film and in Borat and other movies.
Yeah, I
but
haven't seen
at least
Borat.
like a movie like Borat was filmed under false pretenses as like a way of like skewering American culture.
Right.
And, like actually like holding some people in power accountable.
Right.
To this is just some rich assholes like little trip around the world.
Yes.
Yeah,
Where
he does
gets to make fun of the
zero-
little people.
Zero to speak to abuse of power.
Yeah. And I think the most evident example of that to me was when they went to the Dome of the Rock. They mentioned how no one who is not a Muslim is allowed inside.
Yeah.
And then they're like, look at us. It's a Jew. It's a Christian. It's a half Jew, half Catholic. We're in here. And they're letting us in here. What a bunch of idiots. They can't even stick to their own rules. And they're like trying to hold the guy accountable for being like, well, then why are we in here if no Muslims are allowed in here?
Right.
And he's like, well, because you guys were inquisitive and wanted to know, and we want to teach other people.
So gracious.
And they're like, what a dummy. And then they show like people praying while somebody like vacuums the carpet, and they're like, what a fucking stupid place this is. They clean the floors.
Yeah.
It's just fucking disgusting.
It's so foul.
It's so gross.
What a pig, man. I
Yeah.
hate him so much.
And it's like, it's one thing to do that to Islam and Christianity in the same film, but then to also be like, on top of being stupid, Islam is also dangerous to society. Is like, and they do say that about Christianity, but not to the extent that
No, not to the
No.
extent.
No.
Because at the end of the day, Christianity is still, you know, they look like me. American Christians, they look like me. It's like, it's
so I can
fucking-
reason with them.
Right. It's so weird.
And his ultimate big problem with Christianity is that Christianity is a doomsday cult, which it's actually not. It's just like certain denominations that focus on revelation so much. That is
Absolutely.
not every church
Yeah.
by a long shot.
Actually, that's a good point, because I wanted to bring up a verse that is cited at the end of the film, Revelation 9:6, because I think this is very appropriate because it described how I felt watching this documentary. Revelation 9:6, during those days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. That was, I would say, exactly what I was feeling while watching.
I liked when they put the fake subtitles under the guy who got mad at them for filming inside the Dome of the Rock.
Yeah,
And it
what
said, I hate Bill Maher. He is not funny. This Jew is not funny.
Yeah, what a
I was
narcissist.
like, they're reading my mind.
Something in it for everyone. Bill Maher
Yeah.
really united us.
It's true.
Anything we should any other like beats to hit on this? I mean, we we're obviously
That's
doing really
it.
good on
Before
time.
his
Just-
like last little soliloquy about why I thought it was gonna end in like a way of like, you know, we all have our differences, but at the end of the day, we're all humans. But no, it was like still just like I don't know if they were trying to be ironic or not, but he gave the speech where he's like, atheists need to. Well, he said rational-minded people need to rise up and like stand up to religious people.
That
He's
makes
such
me
an ugly,
that makes
ugly
me
man.
shudder.
He's
That is
so
a religion
ugly.
of death right there. And
Not working with others ever, just belittling them and saying
Not seeing the good in any
Yeah.
other human.
or any reason why you would
Because of
do
your-
something.
Yeah.
Even with all the doomsday stuff, like why do you think there's so many post-apocalyptic movies? Like look at how any big government operates and like says like yeah we're listening to you and then just does whatever they want.
Right.
Like of course people like end up getting focused on these types of things and being like wow stuff's getting worse. Like nobody does anything serious about climate change. Like there's a lot of reasons why somebody could come to the conclusion that we're like towards end times.
Yeah, I think
I know
so.
plenty of people who are not religious who also think that we're heading towards end times.
Understandably.
And like to have this documentary and show those things and not once talk about at length about how people in power use religion to exploit others and just talk about how religion is stupid. It's just like fucking you have this platform to like seriously pick at these like scabs on society.
Yes.
And you don't do it.
No.
Because at the end of the day, you work at HBO and you're owned by one of the 5 companies that owns everything that is all of its profit are dependent on society working the way it is exactly how it is
Absolutely.
right now.
It is such effective propaganda for the American state, capitalism, white supremacy, like any fucking like ism that, you know, any like maybe not Bill Maher, but any like reasonable person would, you know, look and say like, oh, this is a dominant ideology that is probably more of an existential threat to our survival than a Christian guy who believes that he's the second coming of Christ. You know, Bill Maher promotes all of those things. This documentary is in direct service to the American imperial state and everything that goes along with it. It's insane.
Yeah.
So one of the most insane pieces of propaganda I think we've covered on the show. Pretty cool. I'm glad you watched it.
You know, I'm grateful that we're at a time in our lives where we can see it for what it is.
Me too. Yeah.
It's true.
Instead of maybe if I had watched it when it came out, I might have agreed with some of it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to not be that person.
Yeah.
You know, I never saw it then, so I can't say for certain.
He just has like no sense of community either.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has no friends.
No
He
sense of
sucks.
beauty. Like, again, like I said this earlier, but how, even if you're a fucking staunch atheist, how can you not see that trucker church and be like, this is rad? Like, even on just like a fucking aesthetic, like novelty level, like you have to be a black-hearted person to not like see something fun or even whimsical like about this. It's insane to me. Whew. Should we rate this thing?
Yeah.
Let's give it the official.
I
Boys
do
Bible
hope
Study
that
rating.
more, you know, puppets of the state are like Bill Maher and stuff.
Yeah.
Just totally ineffectual and
That's true. Maybe the best
Like
thing we can
stupid.
say about this documentary is that it swayed nobody's opinion.
yeah. That is definitely true. Everyone who saw this movie is still in their belief.
Yeah.
Unless you saw this and walked away and be like, God, I sound like an asshole when I talk to my religious friends.
Right.
Hey, we gave a couple people jobs, you know?
Or if you
Yeah.
just weren't familiar with Bill Maher, you might be like, oh, that guy's an asshole.
Yeah.
What do you say? Who wants to start?
It was, you know, a road movie made by a bunch of men in their early 50s with the minds of 13-year-old boys.
Yeah.
They had $2.5 million to make a Ray Comfort level exploitation movie.
Yeah.
I'll give it a 3 out of 3 White Claws, which is what I was drinking during the movie.
As for me, I would say, Religulous, this Bill Maher outfit was a very important piece of American cinema. I think it does much to illuminate the machinations of the American imperial state. I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 daily calls to prayer. This was a absolute banger of a documentary, and I am very appreciative. I agree wholeheartedly with everything in it.
Whoa.
This movie really opened my mind to how truly close-minded Bill Maher is, and I'm going to give it 1 out of 1 descriptions of how a TV works to ants.
Well, there you have it, folks. Yet another amazing religious film. I can say decidedly this was a religious film. So I'm very glad we finally covered it for the show. Thank you all for listening. I would like to invite you to go to boysbiblestudy.com to subscribe. Links to all of our the places where you can get our show are found there. If you haven't checked out our back catalog, please do. And if you like our free episodes, check out patreon.com/boysbiblestudy. For $5 a month or more, you get access to all of our bonus episodes. We make 2 or more every month. Also, shout outs to our very generous patrons at the $20 tier. We give shout outs to all of you patron saints. Thank you so much, Nicole, Russell, Marissa, and Jeff. Our outro music is Oh My God by Mary. From all of us here at Boys Bible Study, myself, Ash, my co-hosts, Scott and Julian, we would like to say, peace be with you.
And also
with you.
with you.
Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I feel your love in me, it's coming from within. Oh my God, my devotion is so unwavering. Divine emotions when you enter me. Every day